Before we get started with today's interview, just a quick reminder, click the thumbs up, make sure you subscribe and ding the bell so that you don't miss any of the great interviews that we have coming up. Now, on to today's interview. Welcome back, everybody. Today, my special guest with me is composer Kristen Allred. Kristen, thank you so much for taking time to join us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk to you.
I want to start off by talking a little bit about you as a composer and learning a little bit about your background. So tell me, do you come from a musical family?
I would not say necessarily so. I had a mother that she learned to play the piano when she was an adult. And she was able to get to a pretty high level of playing for learning as an adult. And so then there were 6 kids in our family, and she just decided all of us were going to take piano no matter what. There was no choice. So from the time we were all 8 to the time we were 18, we all had to take piano. And the way she approached it is very interesting because I never ever fought back on taking. None of my siblings that I know of did, because it was like going to school. You just go to school and you go to piano, and that's what you do. So I never really thought about not doing piano, and all my siblings did it growing up. And we had 3 pianos in our home, and 2 of them were in the same room right by each other. And so we'd be practicing next to a sibling different things, and you just learn to tune them out. So we just had lots and lots of music in our home growing up. And my mom was really good about having lots of variety of music. Like we would learn classical with our teacher, but then she'd have Broadway and pop and hymns and all kinds of stuff. We'd be sight reading at the same time too. So my mom was able to create this really great environment for learning to play the piano.
I love how the lessons were just an expectation at your house. It's just, this is just what we do. It's like brushing your teeth. Why would you think twice about that? Like, yeah. It's not an option. It's just what we do. How did you feel about that? Did you ever come to a point where you felt like, wait a minute, none of my friends have to do this? Like, what's going on here? What was your feeling?
That's the thing. I never questioned it. I never even thought twice about it. I was just like, this is what my family does. My mom was just kind of had a really interesting way about getting us to do things without directly telling us, you are going to do this. It was just kind of an assumed thing. Like she had a special talent that way that not a lot of people have, and it's kind of it became an identity as our family. And so it was kind of how we became known, to people around us too, is this is the piano playing family.
Oh, that's so cool. And I love that your mom was supplementing the materials that you were getting outside of lessons with some things that were really different. How did the exposure to Broadway and some more popular styles influence what you now do as a composer?
Oh, definitely. Because I not only love classical, I love pop. I love Broadway musicals very passionately. I love choir music. I love hymns. I love jazz. I took a year of jazz piano after I got my degree in piano pedagogy. So definitely every musical influence you have in your life is going to feed into your composing for sure. The more you can listen to music and appreciate it and study it. I have a lot of different theory type books. I'm always reading about chord progressions and whatnot and trying to find, interesting sounds on the piano. The more it's going to influence your composition and your teaching, I think, as well, when you're teaching students.
Absolutely. I love how you are drawing all of those different styles together and kind of synthesizing them into something that's uniquely yours and your own. When did you start composing, and how did that become part of what you do?
I did not compose growing up. I didn't even really think about it until college. I had theory classes. I went to Utah State University. And as part of my theory courses, you had to write a composition to go along with, like if we were learning about Baroque music, okay, now you got to write a composition based on the concepts you're learning. I was scared to death the first time I had to write a composition. I can't do this. This is too scary. Well, once you're given some tools, you're taught about a certain type of music, you learn about some chord progressions. You have those tools and then you get a little push to do it. I found out that I really liked it the more and more I did it. And it's like composing. I really felt like it took me years to where I was composing things that I really liked. And I would send off things to publishers and they'd get rejected. And I just have this personality where if someone tells me no, I'm going to try even harder. And I'm going to, I can do this. So it would kind of fuel my passion. I just wanted to write that type of thing that motivated a student to sit down and they couldn't wait to play it. They couldn't wait. They didn't care if it was a little bit hard because they just couldn't wait to play it.
Well, I think you've certainly achieved the aspiration to write things that students love, because I know my students have really loved playing your pieces over the years. And I also really like something that I heard you say. I kind of want to just call it out because I think it's so important. You had a professor who challenged you to compose, and it wasn't really something that you had considered before, but it turned out to be something that you love and you're really good at it. So I think that's just a really cool thing that you were given that challenge and that opportunity.
You know, you get rejection letters. Most people, if you're going to send things to a publisher, you probably need to be prepared that you're going to get some things rejected. That's just how it's going to be. And just being willing to take that and take the suggestions they'll give you, because most publishers will give you suggestions and they'll say, you know, I like a lot of what you're doing, but for this to work for a student, you know, you've got to write right in their level. Or anytime you get a publisher that will give you any kind of feedback, instead of being offended by it, listen to it. They know what they're talking about. They're going through thousands and thousands of manuscripts being sent to them. They know what's going to do well. And so if you get lucky enough to have a publisher tell you anything, you better listen. And then if you get in with a publisher, the editor is going to want to give you suggestions. And so learn from them, learn from anything you can, and take their suggestions and think about them.
That is really awesome advice, to be open to the suggestions of other people, because it helps you to improve your craft.
You just have to go through the process, and usually you'll have to look on their websites to see what their process is for accepting music. Some publishers don't accept anything, or they'll only accept certain types of music, certain types of arrangements. And then you usually have to wait, maybe up to 6 months, maybe up to a year. It's a lot of waiting. And even once you get in with a publisher, you still may have to wait several months to get that piece published. So, you know, composers are lucky now because you can just you can have your music on sheetmusicplus.com tomorrow, today. You can get it on JW Pepper. There's a lot of ways you can get your music out there. You can sell it yourself on your website. I do that. I do some of everything. You know, you can just start a YouTube channel. So there's really no excuse now. If you want to have your music out there, there's so many ways to get it out there.
And that brings me perfectly to my next question, which is, how do you feel? What do you think are the pros and the cons of self-publishing or publishing through a small independent publisher, as opposed to going through a more traditional process, which may include editorial advice and layout advice and all of those kinds of things? And I think you're ideally suited to answer this question because you kind of have one foot in both worlds.
Yeah, I think we're really lucky to have both platforms. And I think if you are someone who is really enjoys social media and putting your face out there and performing on camera, and your compositions are good, you'll probably do pretty well. If you're someone who is a little bit more introverted and doesn't like to, you know, throw your face out there a lot, maybe you would enjoy a traditional publisher more. I kind of love doing both because there's some things I compose that really, I don't think the publisher is going to be just right for them. Or it might be, I only have one or two pieces that are like this. They're more solos I should put out myself. Whereas some things I think are just perfect for a publisher. And I love working with an editor. I love getting the feedback. And then they do all the marketing for you. And they make it look beautiful. And then Chose is really good about sending it to places like Federation, where that's a huge thing that gets it out to so many piano teachers and students. It takes a lot of the weight off of you, so you can work on composing more than just marketing.
That is awesome advice. And I'm so happy I asked you, because you have so much knowledge about both sides of this and all aspects of this. What role do restrictions play in your compositions?
When you're writing for students, you always have to put some kind of restrictions on yourself. You always have to be thinking about, am I writing for elementary, late elementary, early intermediate, like you have to, because if you write a piece for a, you know, little beginner student and you put something really difficult in it, that piece is no good for that student. So you have to really understand the level you're writing for. The reason I try to write music that's so engaging and fun is because I think if it's a little challenging, the student's going to want to be pushed a little bit. They're going to want to jump to a little bit higher level.
Absolutely. That makes perfect sense and completely resonates with me, with my experience as a piano teacher. Do you teach composition, Kristen?
I teach piano, and I try to get all my students to compose like as part of piano lessons. So I introduce it to all of my students. I think it fits naturally in with teaching them theory. You know, it's hard to do a whole lot of it if you're doing a 30-minute lesson. It might just be a little bit we touch on. If they're taking a little longer lesson, it's easier. Some students will really take to it naturally and love it, and others not so much ever really take to it. But I always encourage them to be doing some composing. And it kind of, as you see their music advance, you show them that in the music. Oh, look what the music is doing here. Look at that compositional idea. What if we did it on the piano? I bet you could write something better. Sometimes they can. So I think it all fits in with piano lessons. It's hard to do it all, theory, technique, piano, composing, arranging, but they all kind of complement each other. And I think they help students understand their music more. And some students just really take to composing and do really well.
I love how you're helping your students to build that compositional vocabulary by calling out different things that are happening in pieces. How do you overcome some of the challenges that often beset composers, where you have the blank page syndrome and you have difficulty getting started, or you start a million things and finish nothing?
There's a lot of different ways that I might get inspired to start. You know, maybe you hear something in your head and you want to go mess around on the piano and try to develop it. Sometimes you don't hear anything. There's nothing there. And I will open up some music that I love. What are they doing? What makes this piece work? What kind of accompaniment pattern are they using that I like? What kind of rhythm or chord progression? And I might play around with that a little bit and turn it into something completely different. That for me is kind of being inspired by other composers and what they're doing. Sometimes if you can't finish a composition, maybe let it sit for a while and then come back to it, because your brain will be working on it. I like to record myself and then listen to it. I'll hear it completely differently. If you can't figure out an ending, open some wonderful pieces you like. How did they end the piece?
I love how you draw inspiration and study what other composers have done and then kind of ask, how can I apply that technique to what I'm doing in this piece? I think that's a great strategy. I love that. So I read in the bio in the front of one of your books that you do multiple things, that you are a church musician, that you are a music instructor, and that you're a composer. So talk to us about having a multifaceted career. How do you feel about that, and how do you manage that, and how do you make it work?
I just like to do a lot of different things, and I like to be busy. And I never feel like I'm doing any one of them to the best of my ability. And so I think managing time, you have to set a lot of goals with writing compositions. I think it's really helpful to say, I want to write this much by this amount of time, or I want to finish this piece by this date. Because when I set goals, I usually don't reach them, but I reach a lot more than if I hadn't set the goal.
I love all of that, and I love how you sometimes are very goal-oriented and set aside and say to yourself, I have to get this done. Yeah. I think that's really cool. But I also love the idea of setting aside time, because is something that can easily fall by the wayside, I think, for all of us. So It's great to hear you say that. I think that is just really helpful. Thank you, Kristen.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.